So imagine a woman sitting at a park simply having a cigarette break. She flicks up her lighter cap, ignites her cigarette, and begins to smoke it. What exactly went wrong here?
For starters, the people around her are now being subject to a process called secondhand smoking, where due to their inhalation of the smoke, they are being subject nearly the same harmful toxins going into their lungs as an actual smoker does, thus exposing them to illnesses such as lung cancer. Because of this woman's consumption of a harmful good, the citizens around her are being harmed. Furthermore, because cigarette butts can take upwards of 10 years to decompose, they end up polluting the environment if not disposed of properly, which is often the case with smokers who just flick it to the side. My point? This is, in a simple matter, what is called a negative externality of consumption. By definition, it is the general consumption of products such as demerit goods that can cause a negative effect for third parties. There are various examples of this aside from the smoking case study. For example, when someone drinks alcohol and is under the influence, they are likely to cause a fatality if they decide to drive and thus commit a DUI. And while drunk, they are also likely to cause noise pollution as they will be very loud. There are also examples that may only indirectly involve humans. For example, on a crowded highway, as individuals consume road space, they reduce the available space and thus deny it for others. In a negative externality of consumption graph, the axes are labeled with price and quantity, and a basic equilibrium is drawn where there is one supply curve and two demand curves as shown. The supply curve shows the marginal social cost, which is equal to the marginal private cost, and the demand curves are the marginal private benefit and the marginal social benefit, which is smaller, as it is a negative externality. The misallocation of resources is the difference between the quantity value of the private and social optimums. The welfare loss is a triangle pointing towards the social optimum, which is the blue triangle shown on the graph. An easy way to remember is that negative externalities point left while positive points right. Now that we have recognized the cons of a negative externality of consumption, how exactly do governments regulate it? Let us use smoking in the Philippines as an example, seeing as there is a large population of smokers here that have been impacted by Duterte's recent passing of stricter consumption laws. To introduce this market failure, as of 2009, the Philippines had 17.8 million people, or 28% of its adults smoking. This was back when they had no explicit laws on smoking. However, after the following initiatives that they took, which we are to examine, the smoking population has dropped to 22.7% of adults in 2017, 55% of which have tried to quit in those 12 months. Now let's look at the initiative which the new Duterte government took.
The first way a government can reduce negative externalities of consumption is by imposing indirect taxes on the production of goods that cause these externalities, which means that they are reducing the available supply. To visualize this, as the price has an upward shift from the imposed tax, the supply has a decrease. In order to reduce the supply of cigarettes, the demerit good that causes this negative consumption of externality, he has added a 40 peso indirect tax that he says will increase in the future based on the outcome. Secondly, the government can pass laws on the consumption of demerit goods that create nuisances for society. In the case of the Philippines, Duterte has completely banned the smoking of cigarettes in public venues in Bonifacio Global City and other places with fines upwards of 1,000 Philippine pesos, which will greatly decrease the demand for cigarettes, seeing as citizens may think the fine outweighs the want for a quick cigarette while on the break or outside, so there is a trade-off. They have also imposed an 82 Philippine peso price floor on tobacco, the primary commodity itself, which also generally leads to a decrease in quantity demanded. Finally, a very common way for governments to greatly decrease the demand for demerit goods that cause negative externalities of consumption is through persuasive advertising that may raise awareness in campaigns to alert consumers on various unwanted side effects and to reduce their chances of consumption. For example, in the Philippines, there is a requirement for all tobacco products to include graphic images of the side effects of smoking, such as gruesome images of lung cancer and lung tar. This is a great way for cigarette consumers to realize the consequences of smoking, thus decreasing their demand of the product. And so this has essentially been what a negative externality of consumption is and some of its real world applications.